Next example, if y1 equal to 1 minus x1, y2 equal to x1 into 1 minus x2 and y3 equal to x1 x2 into 1 minus x3, then find Jacobian of y1, y2 and y3 with respect to x1, x2 and x3. We know the Jacobian of y1, y2 and y3 with respect to x1, x2 and x3 is the determinant partial derivative of y1, partial derivative of y1, partial derivative of y1, partial derivative of y2, y2 and y2. At the third row, partial derivative of y3, y3 and y3 with respect to x1, x2 and x3, with respect to x1, x2 and x3, with respect to x1, x2 and x3. Call this as a star, number star. Given functions. Now given functions are y1 equal to 1 minus x1, means y is a function of x1 and here x2 and x3 are absent. In the second, x1 into 1 minus x1, x2. After simplifying this, we get y2 equal to x1 minus x1, x2. Here x3 is the absent. In third case, x1, x2 into 1 minus x3. After simplifying this, y3 equal to x1, x2 minus x1, x2 and x3. Product of x1, x2, expand this bracket. x1, x2 into 1 is this and x1, x2 into x3 is this. Now take this y3. Now this is after simplification we get y1, y2 and y3. Now find the first order partial derivative of this with respect to x1. Here is the y1. y1 is the 1 minus x1. Call this a partially differentiating 1 with respect to x1, with respect to x1, x2 and x3 respectively. With respect to x1 काढताना x2 आणि x3 काय असतील, कॉन्स्टंट असतील. विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू x2 काढताना x1 आणि x3 कॉन्स्टंट आणि विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू x3 काढताना x1 आणि x2 कॉन्स्टंट असतील. डाबा y1 अपॉन डाबा x1, पार्शियल डेरिव्हेटिव्ह ऑफ y1 विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू x1, 1चं 0 आणि मायनस ॲज इट इज x1चं 1. इन द नेक्स्ट पार्शियल डेरिव्हेटिव्ह ऑफ y1 विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू x2, इथे x2 नाही त्यामुळे x2 इज ॲबसेंट, मीन डेरिव्हेटिव्ह इज 0. Partial derivative of y1 with respect to x3, here is again x3 absent, means its derivative is 0. Thus we get 3 partial derivative. Now y2 is the x1 minus x1 into x2. Call this as a second. Partially differentiating 2 with respect to x1, x2, x3 respectively. Then we get y2 with respect to x1. काय असेल, partial derivative of y2 with respect to x1. x1 is there with respect to x1 is the 1 with respect to x1. Here x2 is the constant, means minus x2. x2 as it is and x1's derivative 1. Hence, the partial derivative of y2 with respect to x1 is the 1 minus x2. Now, partial derivative of y2 with respect to x2. Here is the x1 and we want the derivative with respect to x2. Means its derivative 0 and x1 is a constant and derivative of x2 with respect to x2 is the 1. Hence partial derivative of y2 with respect to x2 is the minus x1 only. In the third, partial derivative of y2 with respect to x3, here is the only x1 and x2. Terms of x3 is absent, hence derivative with respect to x3 is 0. Now third function काय y3 equal to x1 x2 into 1 minus x3. After simplification we get x1 x2 minus x1 x2 and x3. Partially differentiating with respect to x1 x2 and x3 respectively, and we get that is the partial derivative of y1 with y3 with respect to x1. Here is the x1 and x2. Now here we are going to find the derivative with respect to x1. Mean x2 is the constant, derivative of x1 with respect to x1 is the 1. In the next, x1 minus x2 is 3. x3 is the constant and derivative of x1 is the 1. That is the partial derivative of y3 with respect to x1. Now partial derivative of y3 with respect to x2. किती असेल x2 with respect to x2 means x1 is a constant and x2 चा derivative 1 minus x1 and x3 is the constant and derivative of x2 is a 1. Therefore minus x1 x3. That is the derivative of y3 with respect to x3. At the third y3 with respect to x3. Here is the in the next page partial derivative of y3 with respect to x3 काय असेल ते x1 x2 असल्यामुळं याचा 0 होईल आणि इथं x3 आहे मायनस x1 x2 कॉन्स्टंट x3चा with respect to x3 is the 1. Thus we get 9. Now star becomes काय असेल Jacobian of y1 y2 and y3 with respect to x1 x2 and x3. कसा असेल फर्स्ट रो काय असेल minus 1 0 0. That is partial derivative of y1 is the with respect to x1 minus 1 with respect to x2 0 and with respect to x3 is the 0. The partial derivative of y2 with respect to x1 is the 1 minus x2. Here is the minus x1 and 0. That is the 1 minus x2 minus x1 and 0. At the last row, x2 minus x3, x1 minus x1 x3, and at the last minus x1 x2. And now expand this determinant, we get the value of that determinant. This is the diagonal matrix and lower lower diagonal चे खालचे सगळे नॉन झिरो आहेत आणि above diagonal all are the zero. Hence determinant value of the determinant of this diagonal matrix is the only simply product of diagonal element. त्यामुळे पूर्ण एक्सपांड करायची काही गरज नाही. त्याच्या प्रोडक्टचा काय करू आपण त्याच्या डायगोनल एलिमेंटचं प्रोडक्ट घेऊ. Simply this minus 3 times and here is the x1 2 times and x2 single times. Thus we get Jacobian of y1, y2 and y3 with respect to x1, x2 and x3. Thus which is the required. हेच आपल्याला एक एक्सटेन्शन करता येईल. कसं एक्सटेंड करता येईल एक्झाम्पल इफ y1 इक्वल टू किती होतं आपलं y1 1 मायनस x1, y2 किती होतं x1 इंटू 1 मायनस x2, y3 किती होतं x1 x2 इंटू 1 मायनस x3. अशा पद्धतीने आपण कुठंपर्यंत घेतलं असतं yn इक्वल टू x1 x2 आणि हे xn मायनस 1 म्हणजे लास्ट टर्म काय असतील 1 मायनस xn हे एक्झाम्पल येईल. त्यानंतर त्याचं जॅकोबियन काय असेल, जॅकोबियन ऑफ y1 y2 अप टू yn विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू x1 x2 xn इज द -1/n. जसं थर्ड ऑर्डर होता तिथं थर्ड आला, आता nth ऑर्डर 1. इथं थर्ड ऑर्डर होता, x1ची ऑर्डर 2, म्हणजे इथं nची ऑर्डर काय असेल n-1 x1 x2 किती असेल n-2 इंटू x3 असं, आणि शेवटी काय असेल x2 आहे इथं xn-1 आणि इट्स पॉवर इज द 1. दिस इज एक्झाम्पल होमवर्क करायचा संपला.